Hello, my name is Bridget Surratt. I'm with Canada Patient Resource Connection, and welcome to Advocacy Strategies, Effective Advocacy in Navigating Public Meetings. I'm going to ask that you excuse my raspy voice. I am flirting with pneumonia right now, but I have the other two courses up, and I need to get this up. Once I am healthy, I will record a better version of this and delete this one. Reaching out. The only way to change things is to actually get involved. You also want to get to know your neighbors outside of politics and create the community you want to see. Those are the basic building blocks to being able to create real change. Remember, always be ethical, spread kindness, even if your opposition does not and there's a good chance they won't. Get to know those that are different than you and know revolutions come in many forms. With regard to spreading kindness, even if your opposition does not, there is a way to be very firm and strong in your stance without spewing hate and personal insults. Frontal attribution error happens quite a bit, and I would encourage you to explore our other two courses in this leadership series / volunteer training. Revolutions come in many forms. Non-political strategies of revolution can start a co-op or organic garden, create a community within your municipality that supports each other. Put your social media down. And while social media is incredibly effective for getting the word out for certain things, if that's all you're doing, then you're doing it wrong. You have to use the social media for what it's good for, but there has to be other action involved in your advocacy for you to be effective. Begin a local economic network where homemade goods can improve the financial situations of citizens, not just CEOs. This means that if you have a person that makes children's ponchos or someone that makes beauty products, purchase from them. Yes, it may be a little more expensive. We have a very unrealistic idea of how much stuff we should actually have. But when you really think about where those other products come from that you're buying at Walmart or in department stores, we tend to realize that we're not supporting the right entities and we need to be supporting our neighbors. So just keep that in mind. Strength in diversity. And diversity means variety, according to Webster's. Embrace the differences in humans and understand that diversity is more than just looks. Learn about other cultures and find the common ground. Believe it or not, it does not matter what political party you are. It does not matter what religion you are. We all have more in common than we don't. And be an example of cultural inclusion. And to speak to this slide, diversity is way more than looks, and it tends to get lumped in with looks and race specifically. But diversity applies to many things. It applies to religious thought. It applies to ideological thought. It applies to political thought. And diversity is actually our strength. The fact that we are different and have different perspectives and experiences allows us to learn from other people's mistakes and to learn about what other people experience and feel. So be an example of that cultural inclusion. Be an example of inclusion, period. Know that our differences make us who we are. It's not those things that are similar. While the differences do seem annoying at times, and we don't understand how people can get to that, it's always a good thing to ask why. So imperfections are a normal part of being human. Ask someone's why before assuming. Always ask somebody's why before assuming. Our opinions are shaped by experiences and observations. When someone thinks differently, ask about those experiences. Differing opinions are okay. I see a grammar error. That's okay. I'll fix that when we're done. Other experiences are just as valid as those that shape our experiences. Yelling and insults Cut off listening and stop the conversation before they begin. The minute you throw out personal insults, you have lost. Prepare. Now this is getting into political advocacy. So understand, prepare, and preparation is the number one thing that you can do. Always dress for the crowd that you're speaking to. Smile often. Discuss only the policy and not gossiping about people that you have issues with. No personal insulting, else you've already lost. Make sure you have all your materials ready to go the night before, and make sure you have all the meeting info. So what that means is if you are going up to the state capitol, you would dress like they do, simply because you want your message to be received. I know it shouldn't matter, but it does. It is what it is. We're still working on that perception, but there's not much we can do about it in the meantime. So if I'm going to teach to patients, I won't necessarily dress in a suit. However, if I am going up to the Capitol, I will wear a blazer and dress pants. Smile often. We often forget to smile. And when our face is angry or we have extreme nervousness, we will not be received. And a lot of people, when they get up there, they tend to discuss the people. I don't like you doing this. I don't like you doing that, rather than actually discussing the policy and what's wrong with it and why it's wrong. Make sure you have all your materials ready to go the night before. If you're testifying at either City Hall or at the state capitol, you can enter your testimony in written form into public record. And that is amazing in case you don't get to finish it, because making sure you have all the meeting info means making sure you know when and where and how much time you have to actually present. So be sure you know how many copies you need the night before to make sure you have that ready to go. So what do politicians actually care about? Verified constituents. When I send off emails, blanket emails to all the senators or all the House of Representatives, I'll always get, not always, but occasionally I'll get an email back asking where I live, so they can verify that. Advocacy requiring effort. Anything that you do that requires effort, it might get their attention. It may take a lot of effort to get their attention, but it does help. Not looking bad. Your politicians do not want to look bad, and they want those photo ops. So you can use those tools. You have them in your tool bag. So whether you want to use them or not, that is entirely up to you in your situation. But know that those are things that you can use to your advantage. Types of public meetings. There are so many different types of public meetings, and this is not an inclusive list. But some of the more popular ones are town halls, which you see popping up all over the place now. You see a lot of with or without you town halls and whatnot. City meetings, which I have the pleasure of taking part in quite a bit. County meetings, state meetings, and focus groups. Those are all types of public meetings that you can be a part of. Usually a public meeting does mean that you can attend, but understand that not every meeting allows public comment. For instance, in city meetings, City Hall in Colorado Springs meets twice every month. And the Monday before the council meeting, they'll have what's called a work session. It is a public meeting. You're able to attend and come and listen in, but you're not allowed to speak. However, the next day they actually have a city council meeting, and at that meeting you have 3 minutes on any agenda item plus an additional 3 minutes if you want it on a non-agenda item to use. And so public comment is allowed at those meetings. Most focus groups, unless you are a member of the focus group, your comment is not allowed, but that is entirely dependent on who you are meeting with the focus groups. Some are more accommodating than others. State meetings and county meetings are a little more formal, though I have been to some county meetings in Park County that I thought were very interesting in how they were run. So understand that not every place and every meeting is going to have the same format, which is why you need to have all that information prior. Also know that your comments are usually going to be timed, and that time can change. At the state level, normally you have 3 minutes to speak. The other day we were speaking in HB 17-1220, and the moderator decided to move it down to 2 minutes, despite there only being a handful of people to testify. So know that your comments could be timed, and prepare for that. Again, I'm very sorry for my illness right now. All right, public meeting etiquette. Public meeting is business attire for the most part, unless you're there all the time and you have incredibly good relationships with people. Realistically speaking, it is business attire. No interrupting other speakers while they're talking. That's considered incredibly rude and does not look good. If public comment is allowed, there's usually a sign-up sheet. Sometimes it's a little more hidden than others. So be sure you look for it and know if you would like to speak, you probably have to sign up, and if you haven't signed up, you might not get to speak. Do not clap or cheer after other speakers. That will get you kicked out. Do not go over your public comment time if at all possible. They will generally cut you off very quickly depending on which meeting you're in. No vulgarity or yelling when speaking. That's in here because we see it a lot. Speak to the why of your issue and no personal insults. Political advocacy strategies. So start with small, local, and dedicated groups. Start doing something really, really well on a small level and then expand, rather than trying to take on a very large array of topics or a broad thing, because you will ultimately end up becoming very overwhelmed incredibly quickly. So the sooner you can get a good format down with a small local dedicated group, the better you're going to be. Understand that consistent action is what's required, even if it's not a large action. Our first protests had maybe 3 or 4 people in them, and by the end of last year's protest season, we had close to 100 people out nearly every time. Let's see, show up to events where elected officials are and ask for answers to questions. And I put Christy in here because there was a father all those years ago, a couple of years ago, that confronted Chris Christie about his roadblocks to their medical marijuana state program, and asked him. He was very nice. He wasn't vulgar. He wasn't anything other than firm. But he was like, "Hey, are you going to let my child die?" And that made national news, and that really made him look bad. So that is a strategy that you guys have. Just remember, when you're yelling and the insults, that part of it doesn't work, but you can be effective and firm without that. It is possible. I know it's hard, but it is possible. Encourage and praise those supporting your ideals and those things that you agree with, because if we encourage that behavior, it will continue, and we often forget to thank those who are helping us. Visit regional offices and ask for meetings. A lot of this is already taking place, so be sure that you work synergistically with whatever groups are doing this in your area. Check to be sure that's not already being done. If it is, join them. If not, start one. Coordinating blanket calls. That's one of the biggest areas where people don't have volunteers, is doing the canvassing and the blanket calls. So as much of a pain in the neck that is, it might be a good idea to start volunteering yourself. Make sure that your party representatives do their jobs and those you disagree with know why. If you can do that, you're doing your job. Our form of government does not work unless you are involved. You can also organize a mail campaign, which I've seen a lot of those going on. Several peaceful protests have been going on. Sit-ins, theatrical depictions are a fantastic way of doing things. Now, just keep in mind, some events may have legal penalties, so check before you make your strategy choices. Just to give you an example, again with Colorado Springs, because I'm familiar with it, there is a sit-lie ordinance in certain sections of the city. So if you were to hold a sit-in or a protest, there are certain rules that you have to follow, else you will risk your volunteers and your folks getting arrested. And unless you tell them that's a legal liability and they cognitively make that choice, we shouldn't put our volunteers in harm's way. But also remember to have fun. And that's the biggest thing. I put in here, be the Cthulhu you want to see, because we bought in South Park and he's just a fixture on South Park and we have to support the local guys. But the reality is your volunteers and the people coming out, they're coming out for the issues, absolutely, but ultimately they're going to come out for the camaraderie and the sense of community. This is actually a form of community building. So please keep that in mind as you guys go further into your advocacy. And if you have any questions, let us know. Thank you.